in months, not years. The big picture: no person we know in a position of power in AI or governments who doesn't share Sullivan's broad belief in the stakes ahead. They're saying that this new version of ChatGPT 5 or o3 is to nurture and protect America's early AI edge and shape the global rules. Now, we assume it's an edge because we don't know what China has. We don't know what kind of supercomputers they have. They don't disclose that information. We don't know how many nukes they have. We don't know, the AI algorithm, TikTok code. There's so many things that we don't know that are going on in China, and shape the global rules for using potentially godlike powers, he says. And this is beyond uncharted waters. It's an unexplored galaxy, a new frontier, in his words, and one, he warns, where the progress routinely exceeds projections in advancement. Progress is now pulsing in months, not years. The big picture: no person we know in a position of power in AI or governments who doesn't share Sullivan's broad belief in the stakes ahead. They're saying that this new version of ChatGPT 5 or o3 is, as it's called, could potentially have an IQ in the range of 150 to 160, which is essentially a level of intelligence that can virtually solve most of the problems that might be currently befalling mankind. In the top 200 world programmers, it dominated in science and math. So it ranked, when it was assessed, in the top 200 of world programmers. And it also on the ARC-AGI benchmark testing. So that's programmers now. So that means you can tell it to program you a website or a video game or a piece of software, and it will just do it. You can say, I need such and such a software, and it will make it. So it's, well beyond just make me.
Oh, I gotta run the microwave.
well beyond just make me.
Okay, what's up everybody? Just watching this video. I think it's pretty interesting. I'm gonna be talking more throughout the video, but let's run back what he was saying.
Stakes ahead. They're saying that this new version of ChatGPT 5 or O3 is, as it's called, could potentially have an IQ in the range of 150 to 160, which is essentially a level of intelligence that can virtually solve most of the problems that might be currently befalling mankind. In the top 200 world programmers, it dominated in science and math. So it ranked when it was assessed in the top 200 of world programmers. And it also on the ARC AGI benchmark testing. So that's programmers now. So that means you can tell it to program you a website or a video game or a piece of software, and it will just do it. You can say, I need such and such a software, and it will make it. So it's, well beyond just.
He's right. You can do that. It's insane how fast and how complex AI is getting, and how beneficial it is. Can be used for bad, but how beneficial it is to have for good. Yeah, really interesting.
Make me an image that looks like so-and-so, or make me a video. According to the ARC AGI benchmark testing, ChatGPT 4 scored 11%, okay? Humans score around 85%. This particular O3 model scores at 87.5%. Now, people might say, well, that's not much over humans, but understand the progress that's been made in the last 2 years. And of course, really, this is just what they're telling us they have. They might not tell us from here on in out of fear of sparking some sort of public panic, which might attempt to rein this in. Remember, they tried to 2 years ago. There was a debate about how are we going to regulate AI? Well, pretty much, because none of these old geezers even understand how to use TikTok, like hell they're going to understand the potential implications of AI. So NVIDIA, we'll get to that in just a moment, but just show you a few more graphs here. So this is how O3 scored on math. So O1 was, I believe it was like the ChatGPT 3. Okay, so it would score in competition math tests 56.7. It's already up to 96.7. Okay, PhD level science questions already 87.7. Already at a level which is amongst the highest in the human population. Essentially, we are seeing hyperbolic growth in artificial intelligence. Let me just try to put this in perspective. Okay,
This is absolutely insane, and to think about. He breaks it down pretty well. He must have a very good understanding. I have somewhat of an understanding. I use it a lot, but into the technical stuff, I'm not as experienced as some. I wish I could get like somebody that I could find. Maybe I could look around or something, but get somebody on the channel to explain that more for people in simple terms. Anyway, continuing on.
PhD level science questions already 87.7. Already at a level which is amongst the highest in the human population. Essentially, we are seeing hyperbolic growth in artificial intelligence. Let me just try to put this in perspective in other ways, okay? So this is in September of 2024. So a human expert would score 89.8% on this test, whatever test this was. I can't remember. This is I'm not sure which test this is, but so this is how they kind of look at. So GPT-2 in 2019, 32%. You could see the progress here. GPT-3, 2020, 43.9%, 3.5, nearly doubled. And now we're heading into, and this is O1 in 2024. Okay, so the test ceiling is here. So really O3, we're already at the point where it's maxed out in terms of, problems that humans even know are problems at this point in time. Okay, let me see if I can find you guys another graph that really puts this into perspective. The breakneck pace of artificial intelligence development. It really is to a point where we're approaching the singularity. Now, to understand, and I would encourage you to go and just do your own research on this kind of stuff, because this is really fascinating. So you don't, AI and data collection with these simulations.
I find this extremely fascinating. AI is some of the most interesting technology that's ever been created.
It's not just about using a robot in the real world. Normally, how they would go and get data and teach a robot to do something, you'd have to have that robot do it in the real world and program in exactly what you want it to do in every single situation, and it would be limited to learning in real time using its physical form, right? So actually having a robot, if you want to teach a robot how to pour, a cup of coffee, the robot would have to learn, and it would have to do all of these trials over and over and over again, and it would take, an incredible amount of time. So this is NVIDIA's Dojo robot training. This is a simulation that accelerates training by 10,000 times. The robots undergo 1 year of intense training in a virtual dojo, but it only takes 50 minutes of wall clock time. Then they can input, this is the Unitree robot, by the way. If you haven't seen that one, watch my last video. I show a demo of it. Then they can take this new information that the robots learn, put it in the robot, and then the robot is going to be able to navigate the real world. Now, of course, this is not without its challenges and drawbacks and shortcomings, but nonetheless, the idea of virtually training these things and trying to simulate the physics is there, and it works. It can rapidly accelerate the creation of, or the integration of, artificial intelligence and robotics, and we are going to see an explosion in that this year. Now, the problem is, how is it going to be weaponized? What sort of effect is it going to have on an economy where people are so desperate that they're FOMOing into a shit coin that's been put out by the president and his family members? Now it appears that they're probably all going to get in on the shitcoin business at some point. How is this going to disrupt things is the big question. So we're going to hear a big announcement on the 30th, apparently, and that is going to potentially change the game by the sounds of things. Interesting observation. If you're familiar with Trump coin, as it's called, this is where I had to say, are they just messing with us? So there's something called, what is it called? Pareidolia. It's when you see patterns, meaningful patterns in otherwise random bits of data. And so this is to track the stock ticker for Trump coin. And so you can see it shot up there on Friday night. and then it kind of traded sideways a bit, bumped a bit, and then it declined. But isn't that interesting? Did they do that on purpose? Really? Did they do that on purpose? I don't know. This is real too. Didn't believe it at first. I thought this was like AI generated or something, but it's uncanny, isn't it? Look at that. I mean, that is crazy. And because they control 80% of the coins, they very well could have done this to look like that. Now, this is a coin which is supposed to have a 3-year lifespan in terms of the release of, there's a bigger shot for you there. In terms of the release of the coins, I suppose we can get into some of the specifics of it, but it reminds me a lot of this situation right here. You know, this is where we're at. The level of innatity that we're seeing right now. Oh yeah, this is that graph I wanted to show you. So this is ARC AGI V1 scores over time. So it wasn't even on the map, okay? GPT-2, GPT-3 down here in 2020, 2021. Look at this, 2024, 2025. Boom, explosion in intelligence. That's where we are right now. We are in for a wild, wild ride. Now let's talk about Hawktua coin. No, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Trump coin for a moment. Then we'll talk about how TikTok is causing 911 call centers to be overwhelmed.
Do you need a free, easy way to capture your gameplay? Introducing Outplayed. Record anything on your PC.
Okay, so everything we know about Trump coin. Trump runs on the Solana blockchain. 80% of the token supply is reserved for Trump-affiliated entities, far exceeding the typical range of 10 to 30%, okay? Sold via a decentralized exchange and the Moonshot app, which accepts payments like Apple Pay. Moonshot app surged to number 8 in the App Store. This has already made several people millions of dollars. The problem is that it's always a zero-sum game. And unlike a stock, which is based on companies that actually generate revenues, these shitcoins don't generate anything. You don't even use them for anything. You don't even use it as a means of exchange. It is simply for the purpose of gambling. So when you win, somebody else loses. So when you hear all these success stories of, I turned 50 grand on Trump coin into $1 million, that means that somebody out there lost $950,000. It's a zero-sum game. Now, these tokens are not fully liquid, so more coins will be released gradually over 3 years. I believe there's 1 billion coins and 200 million have been released. Increased token supply could dilute existing value. Currently, at the time of making this video, I believe the market cap was around 13 billion. It went up and then it crashed down to 40 after Melania, or whoever is behind the Melania coin, Freudian slip there, decided to put out that coin. Sustainability, early hype may fade, but Trump has shown an ability to sustain attention. So exactly, I could imagine that this coin thing could keep going for a while, and it will be like a Dogecoin, unfortunately. It won't be used for anything, but people will just gamble with it, okay? And so this coin is offered by CIC Digital LLC, an affiliate of the Trump Organization, and Fight 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 LLC, which together hold 80% of the token supply. CIC Digital has also handled Trump's NFTs and other branded ventures. And I don't think Trump is the one doing this. It's probably Barron Trump or somebody, Eric Trump, one of these guys who's actually, really making bank on these scams. Melania launched her own coin. Melania valued at over $5 billion. Shortly after its debut, it's hard to say where it's at now, if it's crashed or it could have went through the roof, because everybody has a fear of missing out at this point in time. So needless to say, people are going to be admonishing Trump for that for the foreseeable future. But as I indicated before, people will likely be distracted in short order, because here are just some of the executive orders that are going to be put into place on day one, okay? Firstly, he's going to be postponing the TikTok ban for up to 90 days, but it's unclear as to whether or not he can even legally do that, okay, because of the Supreme Court ruling. But he is passing that executive order. I guess time will tell. They're going to be closing the U.S.-Mexico border. Yes, closing the U.S.-Mexico border, directing the U.S. military to construct additional infrastructure on the U.S.-Mexico border. He's going to be declaring a state of emergency over the border issue, designating Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, which perhaps might grant them some leeway in going after these organizations, reinstating a ban on transgender and military service, rescinding any DEI policy put into place by the Biden administration, repealing several policies on electric vehicles, which is interesting, with the Department of Government Efficiency overseen by Elon Musk, and apparently no longer Vivek Ramaswamy, because he is now going to be running for governor, apparently. Repealing several policies related to the Green New Deal, removing certain limits on offshore drilling on federal land, declaring a national emergency on energy, which is interesting, removing limits of offshore drilling, okay, I just said that one, orders on mass deportations of illegal immigrants, ending birthright citizenship, reestablishing the Remain in Mexico program, pardons for hundreds, if not thousands, of those who participated in the J6 protests, and the list goes on and on and on. So it is going to be a head-spinning week of chaos. This is an account who I believe sold all of their Trump coin but never made a purchase. They made $35 million. $35 million on the rug pull, okay? So it makes Hawk Tua's coin, it makes Hawk Tua look good, actually, by comparison. But is anybody really holding Trump to account for this shit? Some of the crypto bros are incredibly pissed off about it, but they're really a niche audience. And I don't think that this is going to necessarily garner the national attention it deserves. Because really, this is one of the sleaziest things an up-and-coming president can do. And that's not a political statement, okay? If Obama or Biden or Pelosi, could you imagine if Pelosi tried to pull this? You know, I mean, for one, nobody would buy it. But, you know, this is just a sign of the times, the absurdity in which we live. And this is probably the cringiest thing I've seen since whatever Nicole Arbour's last video was. It's Roseanne Barr and Tom MacDonald, the new song, Daddy's Home. And it's just, you know, when I look at this sort of thing, I have to ask myself.
The hardest thing is obviously finding products to sell and then getting authorized to sell those products. So with Ecom Authority, they've been able to.
And this is the state of human intelligence. It's really bad. It's depressing. It's no different than WAP or what's on the other end of the spectrum. I mean, just North American culture in general is just right down the toilet at this point in time. And you know, it's not going to get much better, I don't think. So in terms of the TikTok ban, TikTok was banned, and then apparently it was reinstated. We don't know if Trump is going to be able to abrogate these decisions or not, but people were freaking out. People were calling 911. I believe a guy set fire to a Wisconsin representative's office over the TikTok ban. They were receiving all kinds of emergency calls from teens and children expressing their love. 170 million people are on this app. It's all about data, and it's all about national security. I did a video 2 years ago on why the TikTok ban is absolutely necessary, if only it has to be put under the control of some American corporation or some American entity, maybe even nationalized. That would be the first. It likely won't happen. But it can't be in the control of the Chinese government, because there is no composite to that. There is no countervailing force there with Americans having apps in the Chinese society. So for this reason, I think that what's likely going to happen is TikTok will be sold, because they want the data. The American government wants the data as much as the Chinese government does. Now, the problem is that the algorithm is patented, And so China's concern has always been, and this is where I believe the negotiations kind of hit a wall, is that the Chinese don't want to relinquish the algorithm, which is an integral part of TikTok. And should they have to sell TikTok or a significant portion of it, that means they would have to forfeit the prized algorithm that they feel is a intellectual property, right? So for that reason, it's likely that they could just have an impasse and the TikTok ban remains in place unless they're able to get some sort of deal, or maybe TikTok USA gets some watered down version, or they just negotiate the sale of the algorithm itself, which people claim is much better than other algorithms of the sort, be it Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, or X videos. Not that kind of X videos, but Twitter videos. So they're thinking that there's a high moat there, but I'm not entirely sure because I've used all of the aforementioned, and it doesn't seem like my attention is held longer on TikTok than it is on Insta Reels. So, who knows? Maybe it's a moat that is shrinking. Canadian dollar is at record lows compared to the US dollar, which is part of the reason why gold is at all-time highs in Canadian dollars. It appears as though people are starting to trade their paper silver for physical. We are seeing that trending higher, as you can see by this graph here, the highest, in fact, of exchange since records were kept, at least as far as this graph is concerned, as far back as the year 2000 anyways. So people are starting to trade in their paper for silver. How's Melania coin doing here? What's our market cap? So our market cap at one point was, what are we at here? Where do I see the market cap? Market cap is currently 7.8 million, which is not that much compared to, presuming that this is the right ticker. There's so many of these meme coins, and a lot of people are buying the wrong Trump coin, thinking that they bought the wrong one. In fact, they pumped one up to like billions of dollars, and it wasn't even the Trump coin. But now, Trump is, at least Trump-affiliated entities are crypto billionaires.
Stop writing essays with ChatGPT. It sounds too AI, so you have to rewrite everything, and doesn't even give you any citation. Instead, use Liner to finish your essay faster. Simply upload your previous essays and paste in your prompt. Based on your writings, Liner will write a complete essay that sounds like you, and even give you a complete bibliography. You'll only need to add a final touch, and it's ready to go. If you are a student, sign up with your school email to unlock Liner Pro for free. Finish your work faster and focus on what truly matters.
GoDaddy Arrow can get my business online in minutes with AI. Let's see. Ooh, I like that logo. Let me just change this. Nice! This is fast. Product descriptions, don't mind if I do. Done. Wow. So this is what it feels like to run a business. Okay, GoDaddy Arrow, I see you. Now, let's see what's next.
Georgia Department of Agriculture, highly pathogenic avian influenza confirmed in commercial poultry. So I believe that means that they're not going to be able to sell chicken, and there's going to be a chicken recall in Georgia. You're likely going to see that across the board. Here's the hypocrisy of some of the purveyors of the mega ideology, Charlie Kirk being one of them. He says ban TikTok in November of 2022. And then in, January of 2023, he says ban TikTok. And today they're celebrating because TikTok is back. Remember that the person who initially proposed the TikTok ban was Donald Trump. And now they're against it for some reason. But it was an incredibly smart move for him to be applauded as the hero, because of course the TikTok generation is Generation Z and A, and so Trump basically just won over Generation Z and A. So for the Democrats to hand him that on a silver platter tells you how out of touch those guys are with the pulse of American politics. What else do we got? Oh yeah, Trump says he's going to disclose records around the assassination of former President JFK and Martin Luther King and other topics of great public interest. I'm personally looking forward to the drone disclosure, but again, when they say they're going to disclose records, what records are we talking about? Is everything going to be redacted in these records? I mean, really, what should we expect here, and can we even believe it when we get it? Are people going to believe it? This is Joe Biden's last descent off of Air Force One, and it looks like he did not stumble the last time. Trump wants tariffs so large they would generate $1 trillion in revenue. Well, isn't that just going to cause manufacturers to raise their prices by $1 trillion? I know Canada is contemplating the nuclear option, and that would mean selling the U.S. our oil at spot price as opposed to giving any discounts, which of course would have pretty serious repercussions on the oil markets, because I believe we sell them 2 million, is it barrels of oil a day? Something to that extent. Anyways, it's a lot. Anyways, guys, that's what I got for you today. I just wanted to make a quick little Sunday night video for you. Things are crazy, and they're going to get crazier and crazier. So here we are, week 3, and this is what we got going on. If you wins, I tell you, my friends, we are truly living in the end. Now, I got to tell you some big news, some big stories, and then we're going to get into the whole TikTok / Trump coin, Melania coin, and all the other silly stuff. But let's talk about the serious stuff right out the gates. Now, what you're looking at behind me is a Iranian bunker that has just been unveiled that is 500 meters deep. This is but one of dozens of similar bunkers. 500 meters is well beyond the depth that any bunker buster is able to hit, even with nuclear weapons. This one in particular is stockpiling their naval assets. Now, this is important because according to Al Arabia, which is a reputable Middle Eastern news agency, even by Western propaganda standards, they are saying that senior European officials believe that Israel has decided to launch an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities following the inauguration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, with discussions being had between the Trump administration and Israel on such an operation. Now, right now, everybody's distracted with the meme coin and the TikTok and the soon-to-be declared state of emergency by Trump with respect to the border crisis, but I believe this is going to be the one that catches the headlines off guard and possibly catches the markets off guard. According to European officials, Iran has violated numerous agreements using diplomacy to covertly advance its nuclear program, including secret facilities in the Fordow and Natanz facilities. Now, because Iran's proxies are currently weakened, this, of course, reduces the risks of a coordinated retaliation against Israel should Iran be attacked, which is not to say that Hezbollah and Hamas are out of the fight entirely, but their ability to mount any sort of retaliatory strike has been severely kneecapped at this point in time. Even conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is backing Israel's right to strike Iranian nuclear facilities, and Canada is aligned with Israel and the United States against Iran's nuclear ambitions, emphasizing solidarity with the Zionist regime. So that is what we can expect quite possibly in week 1. Now, apparently Trump is set to sign 200 executive orders tomorrow. All of this, of course, overshadowing this meme coin fiasco that has happened in the background that you probably didn't even know about because it's not really getting a lot of media attention for some reason. And I do believe that this is a telltale sign of an idiocratic regime in decline, an idiocratic empire in decline. Such folly and absurdity would only be present when you're in the final stages of collapse, because it's not even fiat currency. It's a meme coin. It's a centralized meme coin. You can't even really call it, it's not decentralized finance like Bitcoin. At least Bitcoin is decentralized. This is something altogether. This is a casino. This is really just trying to get money out of people and steal money from people. That's what this entire thing is. I'll explain the whole thing in just a moment. But people are still scratching their heads, asking themselves, did he really just do this? Yeah, he really just did, okay? Now, we also have to talk about Sam Altman and ChatGPT 03.
Okay. I ended up I'm like, you know what? Why not show the whole video? I basically showed the whole video. So that was an interesting. Where was the other one? Two days ago, I think.
Introducing the new Ego Power Plus 2-stage snowblower, a heavy-duty workhorse with unmatched power from the #1.
An advisory saying that you don't have to worry about COVID.
All right.
This is your World War III update. Here's what's going down. The WHO has just issued a warning about bird flu. Interesting timing, isn't it? Just 3 days before Donald Trump is set to take office. Well, Tedros, or as I like to call him, Mr. Solidarity, has a word of warning for the world. Clearly,
I love that.
us for the next shock therapy.
Mr. Solidarity. Oh shit. This some fucking guy.
Treatment, and I say shock therapy because as we inexorably hurtle towards the bottom of the barrel here in Western civilization, you'll notice that every week there's another major global crisis that emerges. I'm not saying that this is going to be week 3, but they're definitely warming us up for that. Okay, here's my predictions once again for 2025. We are going to see civil unrest along socioeconomic, along immigration, along cultural lines, primarily in North America and in Europe. We are going to see likely the emergence of a very lethal pathogen, likely bird flu in some way, shape, or form, and that is going to, of course, have all sorts of repercussions, authoritarian and otherwise, in numerous countries. It's going to be an incredible wedge issue at a period of time where we need anything but that. We are going to see a major cyber attack, because according to the World Economic Forum, we're well overdue for that, right? So we're going to see a major cyber attack. We've seen some temporary faults in the system, but nothing enduring. But I think that's about to change this year. Major cyber attack is on the horizon. Artificial general intelligence is going to be one of the biggest stories of 2025 this year. The elites are up to something. There's warfare happening in the shadows, both biowarfare and otherwise, primarily centered around chips and artificial intelligence, the emergence of AGI. He who discovers AGI, who discovers the ability to essentially create a system that can improve itself at light speed, create Skynet, is going to rule the world. We are going to see an economic crash of epochal proportions. It's a mathematical certainty. The question is, how deep and dark is the recession and depression going to be? And it's going to be particularly bad here in Canada if a trade war ensues. And of course, we will absolutely likely see a major pandemic unfolding. I think I checked all the boxes. Oh, we can't forget about the war with Iran. Asides the slight redress in grievances across the Middle East currently underway and the cessation of hostilities between Hamas, Israel, even the Houthis are saying now, if this ceasefire holds and if the one with Lebanon holds, then they're going to discontinue their attacks in the Red Sea. So these are all very bullish cases. But are they? Because, of course, war with Iran's proxies precludes any sort of direct attack on Iran itself, which is very much what appears is on the horizon. Russia and Iran signed a major strategic partnership today, but Vladimir Putin suspiciously made it abundantly clear that this is not a mutual defense pact like the one that they have with the DPRK and Belarus, North Korea and Belarus, okay? So this is very important because Putin knows that the shit is likely going to hit the fan and Iran is going to be in the crosshairs, and they don't want to essentially have to come to their aid and be, because the Russians, they actually honor the contracts that they sign, and they don't want to be beholden to the Iranians should something emerge. And I think the only reason why Vladimir Putin wouldn't put that into the agreement, and the Russian intelligence is incredibly good, is if they knew that the shit wasn't going to pop off in Iran. The question is, will they notify the Iranians of whatever the West is planning? Now, let's hear what Mr. Solidarity has to say. It's not good.
Now to the global spread of H5 avian.
Mr. Sun. Why is that so loud? I gotta put a limit on that or something. Right there. Test. Test. Testing. There we go. Mr. Solidarity. Eitzvin.
Influenza.
And I sped up his voice to 1.5 just so you can, not fall asleep.
Last year, 66 cases of H5 were reported from the United States, plus 10 from Cambodia, 2 from Vietnam, and 1 each from Australia, Canada, and China.
Now, human cases are down worldwide. Human cases of bird flu are, well, not down, but they're well off the highs that we've seen in 2014. The important thing here is that the prevalence in animal populations is completely off the charts. They don't even really record it anymore in wild bird populations because it's everywhere. They are recording it more in livestock. It's basically all around the world. It's spreading to different species. So the important thing here is, and he doesn't really get into this, and that's why I'm doing this infill, is that not only is it more prevalent, which means the likelihood of a species jump is more likely, but a lot of the cases of humans, of those 66 that he was talking about, they don't know the origins of. So it could possibly be that it's already spreading, it's just going undetected, and it's a less lethal form, because of course, they're going to want to start testing. And you know what that means. They're going to admonish you for not washing your hands and isolating socially with your virtual reality headset in your car with your mask on. Let's see what else Tedro has to say here.
This is the highest number of reported human cases since 2015. So far this year, 2 cases, including 1 death, have been reported in the United States and 1 death in Cambodia.
I see this as a warning for Trump. Why are they releasing this now? And really 5 years, almost to the day after they released on X, or what at that time was Twitter, an advisory saying that you don't have to worry about COVID because there's no evidence that it's spreading person to person. Of course, they're sending a message. They're saying that we're oiling the guns and we're getting ready to point them at you.
Almost all these cases are associated with infected dairy cattle or poultry. H5N1 is of particular concern because since the first human cases were reported in 2003, it has killed almost half of those it has struck. Fortunately, H5N1 has not yet developed the ability to transmit easily between humans, but that could be only a matter of time.
Attention gamers! Easily capture and share your gaming highlights with Outplayed. Outplayed is simple and powerful.
Yeah, 2025.
Every transmission from one animal to another or to a human is an opportunity for the virus to mutate or to mix with other influenza viruses. It's therefore imperative that the virus is not allowed to spread unchecked in animals.
COVID was really just a warm-up, and isn't it convenient as all of the systems that sustain life collapse, never mind all the economic, the breakdown, the multipolar world, even just the cultural decline, the conflicts that are emerging, the resource depletion, the commodities prices skyrocketing, the inflation. Isn't it convenient that now, at any time they want to corral the population and get us on lockdown, they have something? And I'm not saying that this is necessarily something that was created in a lab. Obviously, it's endemic. It's everywhere in the animal population. But what you could have now is a situation where somebody wanted to capitalize on the fact that it is so prevalent in nature, and that any sort of criticism that might be levied otherwise in an environment where it wasn't prevalent as to its origins, any sort of assiduous investigation into its origins might not be conducted, because we're now being primed with the fact that it is everywhere. So the likelihood of it emerging, it's very, plausible that it could emerge. So nobody's going to question when it finally does make the species jump, even if it was the result of some, meddling with the viral DNA or RNA, whatever it is.
WHO is working closely with the World Organization for Animal Health and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in a One Health approach to managing the threat of H5 globally. We call on all countries to strengthen biosecurity on farms, testing and surveillance, and to provide personal protective equipment to farm workers who may be at risk. We also call on all countries with outbreaks of H5 among animals to share viral samples and sequences with the WHO.
Okay, that was on 1.5 speed. Jeez, I do not miss that guy. Here's what's going on. So CDC is upgrading its advisory on bird flu. Will Moderna's stock get a boost? And this is the other thing. All of these companies whose stock prices and market caps are in the absolute pisser, they got a vested interest in something like this emerging. Now, I'm not saying anything, but, there was an old idea that back in the day, a lot of these antivirus companies on your computer, they would actually be the ones that originated viruses in order to get you to go and buy the fix. So, there is a profit motive here to keep the gravy train rolling. And what better gravy train than a illness that has the potential to kill half the people that it infects? Egg prices. Take a look at egg prices at another record high here in January of 2025. Isn't that crazy? And nobody's even talking about this. I remember when it was here before, everybody was talking about it. Like that was big news back then. We had Joel Salatin on the channel, and he was talking about the supply chain shock with eggs and why it was such a big deal. But here we are, just a couple years later, and we're seeing record high prices once again that show no signs of abating, at least at this point. Often what happens with eggs, because it is such a, I can't remember how Salatin explained it, but because, the
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know bird flu was well, I did. Yeah. I didn't know it was a new all-time though. But I knew it was bad. Let's Might as well. Let's look at some maps real quick. Real quick. Bear with me. Nobody likes to look at this. This is crazy, yeah. I think I've showed this before, but a lot of people still don't understand how bad it is. Oh, that reminds me. Is my audio on? Yeah. That reminds me of the headline I seen. What was the headline I seen? It was like in Ohio. There was like 1 million birds that was detected. I think it was in 2025. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, look at this. This is insane. I already watched it. But maybe you haven't. Let's watch it again.
You hear bird flu and think, should I toss all my eggs or am I going to get sick? Here's what the Ohio Department
2
of
weeks ago?
Agriculture says about that.
Those farmers, those
That's when it was
producers that are
released.
producing livestock, they realize they've got a problem in a barn pretty quick. All of a sudden, they've got birds that are passing, birds that are just not acting right. They're not eating and all those things, and that's immediately when they start testing. But it is just really impacting that growing live animal from the industry standpoint, and the products are very safe.
The highly pathogenic avian influenza, known as HPAI, or as we call it, the bird flu, was found in nearly 1 million chickens at a Darke County farm just after Christmas. The ODA says it doesn't specify what farm while there's active cases. But as far as humans go, ODA says there are no reported cases in Ohio.
But from a human standpoint, no concerns from that. As far as this transmission and how it works in this strain.
However, the risk can be higher for people who work with infected animals. Now, according to the USDA, HPAI can't be transmitted through properly cooked meat or eggs. So what happens at the farm once the virus is detected?
That facility is quarantined, and that goes back into the overall biosecurity, making sure we contain and we work through the process of, taking care of the initial issue, but
Gestations are so short, and if you have to do a big cull, these spikes in price are often short-lived because it doesn't take that long to get a whole new batch of chickens in as it would with something like a bigger form of livestock. And of course, eggs have an expiration date, right? So it's very vulnerable to these bullwhip effects in the market. Now, U.S. is awarding Moderna $590 million for bird flu vaccine development. That's today from Reuters. So, of course, again, profit motive. Now, Moderna has been pre-selected to work on this sort of thing, and other countries are already in the process of stockpiling vaccines. If this is something that you're legitimately concerned about, I would recommend getting some Tamiflu through Jace Medical. They also sell a variety of other medications that might help treat some of the symptoms. These are things that you do need with a prescription, but of course Jace Medical allows you to get the medication without having to go in and explain to a doctor that you're worried about the end of the world and all that stuff. Jace has simplified the process. Go through the link in the description if you want to support the channel. This is a cute title. Vancouver backyard chickens practice social distancing from wild birds amid H5N1 risk. So we're going to see chickens with masks on. A lot of this, of course, people are concerned that this is an attempt by big agra or government to try to regulate the hell out of the agricultural system and find another reason to come down on homesteaders and people who are trying to have resilient lifestyles, self-sustaining systems. Of course, all of the regulations that we see, from smart meters to gun control, the whole purpose of all of these things is to offload all the responsibility of everything onto the government, which is usually working hand in glove with some major corporation, right? So, yeah, there's definitely a motive there as well to take meat out of the equation or make it incredibly difficult, which is not to say there is not a threat. I always advise people on this channel, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because the government seeks to capitalize on disaster, I think Naomi Klein called it the shock doctrine, right? So you want to shock the population, and it's a problem, reaction, solution type thing, and then you bring in a bunch of regulation, which actually, empowers the government and disempowers the individual. Just because that is a tendency doesn't mean everything is a conspiracy, okay? There are viruses, okay? The climate is getting warmer, whether you like it or not. Whether you believe it's a threat or not is another story, okay? There are terrorists out there. Are they terrorists? Why are they terrorists? Did they just wake up when they were born and said, hey, I'm going to be a terrorist when I get older? Or is there a socio-historical reason as to why they became the way they did? There are real enemies, real threats, real reasons to be concerned. But, of course, these fears are often exploited by governments to put forth their own agendas. Now, Canadians, we got some extra stuff to worry about. Get a load of this. This is Melanie Joly. She's with the Liberal Party of Canada, may well be the Prime Minister someday. I hope not, because I would like to keep my guns.
Because we know that the impacts on Canadians would be really, really, really difficult.
She's talking about the upcoming trade war with Trump.
And why I'm saying that is we know that there would be lots of job loss across the country. And we know that this would also have an impact on cost of living for Canadians. I won't go into the details of...
If they're saying that in the way that she's saying it, that means it's going to get really, really bad. Because you guys down south don't realize it, but life is actually a lot harder up here, and a lot of it has to do with transport. The country's so damn big. To get the stuff that you guys get down there, we got to pay a lot more for it. In Europe, it's even worse in Europe. We actually have it better. But the inflation, the cost of living, we still have a housing bubble. We never deflated like you guys did during the Great Recession. So there's a lot of bubbles fitting to pop here in Canada. And unfortunately, there's a lot of cheap drugs, and it's very cold. So it costs a little bit more to live. I'm not going to get into the exact statistics, but I believe our highest GDP, is it city or province, is equivalent to your lowest GDP state. Now, of course, there's some different fine print to that might make Canada a little bit more livable in other respects, but nonetheless, it's not going to be good for Canadians. Let's hear what else she has to say.
If a man really hated ads, here's what he would do. Day 1, he would install Pi on his computer without spending a dime because it's 100% free. Day 2, he realizes how clean and clutter-free his browsing experience has been since he got Pi. He doesn't have to deal with annoying cookie pop-ups or targeted ads. Day 3, he can finally binge YouTube and Twitch without interruption because Pi works on every website you've...
What that figure is like, but definitely we have numbers that are highlighting how much this could be devastating. This would be basically starting a trade war. The Americans would be starting a trade war against us, and this would be the biggest trade war between Canada and U.S. in decades.
And I don't think it's going to happen because in the current tense global environment, I don't think Trump can risk alienating his allies, especially considering the Chinese influence in Canada, which is pretty intense, okay? The Chinese definitely have a lot of influence in Canada, particularly out in the West. And one thing you don't want to do is drive your closest ally into the hands of the enemy, be they Denmark, Panama, or Canada. So I think this is, a lot of ostentatious, tough talk. I don't know what it's exactly going to materialize into. Is it going to solve America's problems? Absolutely not. It is not going to noticeably improve the life of the average American person, okay? I believe a lot of this is this sort of imperialistic regional mindset is just to take attention away from the real underlying issues that are causing the American debt bubble, all the conflicts emerging around the world, and the offshoring of jobs, and the immigration and civil crises that America faces. it's just to take attention away from that. It's like a easy, low-hanging fruit, but the problem is it could potentially backfire in a really bad way. What else do we got going on here? Okay, we talked about that. So the Iranians and the Russians, they signed this deal, right? And Vladimir Putin seems fairly content in signing this deal. This is going to be very distinct from the one that was signed with North Korea. And the whole purpose of this primarily is to facilitate the construction of a pipeline which is going to transit gas to India, okay, through Iran. And of course, Russia is viewing this as primarily a socioeconomic partnership, but there are other mutual military benefits, but not in the mutual defense pact sense, okay? So Russia is going to be helping Iran create 2 nuclear installations, reactors at their power plant. They are going to be continuously working with them on weapons development and sharing of information, but they're not going to come to their aid if they're attacked, and they're not going to extend to them the nuclear umbrella. And I don't think Russia would omit that from such an agreement if it didn't have pretty good intelligence to suggest that indeed this was the year that Israel and the United States pulled the trigger. Now, the problem with that is, if we presume that Israel is going to instigate something with Iran, remember, Iran still owes Israel True Promise 3, or they keep claiming that they're going to respond in their own time. Now, if Hezbollah has agreed to a ceasefire, if Hamas has agreed to a ceasefire, and if the Houthis say, okay, if those ceasefires hold, we're going to stop firing rockets, then it becomes harder and harder for America and Israel to suddenly justify some sort of Iranian intervention. What is likely going to happen is there's going to be some high-level assassination or sabotage. As I told you the other day, the Iranians, they discovered that the same type of explosive that was used to detonate all of the walkie-talkies back last September in Lebanon, they found those same components in certain components of their nuclear program, okay? So we could very well see something like that, and then that, of course, would trigger some sort of Iranian response, some overt Iranian response, which in turn would be used as justification then to go to war with Iran. The Americans still have to reboot their military, and that is the purpose of the new SecDef Pete Hegseth. Now, I got a lot of information here on Belarus. I'm just wondering if this is the opportune time to do it. Shall we leave Starship 33 for last? I think so. What's been going on? Okay, so just talking about the Ukrainian front. Now, this is a video of near Odessa, I believe, near the Romanian border last night. There's been a lot of back and forth with drones and missiles, between a lot of exchanges between Ukraine and Russia. This was a drone that actually fell in Romania. So this is something that happens frequently. Romania, of course, is going to be home to one of the largest NATO military bases, and they're currently having some very draconian style political issues right now, in which you're not allowed to criticize any politician, apparently, on social media. They've now outlawed it. So you know things are getting very tense in a lot of the form. Talking about the Ukrainian front. Now, this is a video of near Odessa, something that happens frequently. Romania, of course, is going to be home to one of the largest NATO military bases, and they're currently having some very draconian style political issues right now, in which you're not allowed to criticize any politician, apparently, on social media. They've now outlawed it. So you know things are getting very...
That's pretty crazy. to outlaw that.
Tense in a lot of the former Soviet states or the intermarium states. So it's, this thing with Russia, it's still going on. It's in this weird state of purgatory right now. It appears as though the EU and Keir Starmer are going to be the ones who kind of take the lead on assisting Ukraine moving forward, because of course the reluctance of Trump's Republicans to at least openly partake, but Trump has pledged that he will indeed continue to put pressure on Putin. We just don't know exactly what that's going to look like. In Kursk, this is the outcome in Kursk. So if you think they have it bad in California, well, they do. I suppose this is the equivalent. Take a look at what's happening basically in the entirety of eastern Ukraine. So this is Kursk. Apparently the Russians claim to have retaken 63% of the territory that Ukraine has initially captured, but there are certain places where it's basically a stalemate, and it's largely due to the topography of the region, the high ground, the low ground, that sort of thing. And NATO equipment continues to flow into the area, of course, to assist the Ukrainians, and they continue to do deep strikes into Russia utilizing NATO armaments.
This is what the whole music industry has been waiting for. The Ultimate Producer Bundle 2024 is out now.
Now, Trump had a chat with Xi Jinping. Should we get into TikTok? Let's talk about what's going on in Belarus, because this is a less...
There have long been reports of U.S. Special Forces' top-secret missions inside Africa. For decades, their actions have gone largely unreported, but enough details have now
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1061 of the news, and of course, a Sunday night fundraiser stream, and we have big news yet again tonight. We've heard of more Ukrainian attacks on crucial Russian oil facilities. We've also seen Israeli hostages freed, and also Ukraine prepares a new possible push in the Russian Kursk region. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to get some major news today that Ukrainian armed forces have been able to inflict serious losses onto Russian Federation armed forces within the area of the Kursk front today, near to the town of Suja. We have also been able to hear that simultaneously a major attack has occurred on more Kaluga infrastructure within the Kaluga region, as Ukrainian drones have been heard over the area and air defense fire has been active over the past few hours. Meanwhile, around the remainder of the Ukrainian front lines, heavy battles have ensued from north to south, east to west. We've been able to see that Ukrainian armed forces have once again been able to inflict incredibly decent casualties onto the Russian forces and once again hold the lines for the past 24 hours once again. We have also been able to hear in other news around the world that within the Middle East, the Israelis have been able to see that 3 of the hostages have been released by Hamas, and at the same time, there has been the opening of fuel and food transfers into the area of the Gaza Strip, which appear to already have been hijacked by Hamas, and they are now controlling the food and fuel assets. We have also been able to hear that at the exact same time within Syria, the Russian Federation's recovery fleet is still waiting on standby outside the port of Tartus as the Syrian interim interim government is giving no permissions at this point for the Russian Federation to be able to return into the port of Tartus and recover the hundreds of Russian military vehicles and the thousands of Russian military personnel that are still stuck inside the Russian Federation at this point with no hope of escape currently because of the lack of the Syrian interim government's permission for the Russians to be able to get their forces out of the country. Meanwhile, we've also been able to see that within the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Islamic Republic is now requesting permission and help from the Russian Federation in producing new nuclear reactors to power their energy grid. An incredibly suspicious sort of an ordeal or an event by the Islamic Republic of Iran, as it has been seen in the past that the Islamic Republic of Iran does not largely create a large amount of nuclear power plants or really use them for the exact purpose stated on the tin for electricity production. But nevertheless, we do have a massive amount of news tonight. And of course, tonight is the Sunday night fundraiser for none other than Nova Ukraine, an amazing nonprofit helping out folks in Ukraine behind the lines. So if you would like to support, the goal is $2,500. And hopefully we'll be able to see that more folks inside of Ukraine will be helped through the combined efforts of the entirety of the Lee Spring Army. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the major news tonight, moving us directly on in to the Kursk Oblast. As many of y'all know, the Kursk Oblast has been a significant battlefield for some time at this point. The Ukrainians were advancing into this area approximately 4 to 5 months ago with the hopes of taking a large amount of ground and really tying up a great deal of Russia's combat-capable power in this area instead of on the actual front lines inside of occupied Ukraine. That appears to have been largely successful, and over the course of those months, we have seen that the Ukrainian offensive reached out to its actual maximum height, but at this point, the Russians have been able to push the Ukrainians back into a smaller defensive perimeter around the area of Suja. However, the Ukrainians appear to be, according to Russian Federation intelligence, amassing more forces in the tens of thousands to conduct a new offensive into the area of the Kursk Oblast. And that is supposed to be happening days after the significant and blistering losses that the Russian Federation took today at the hands of Ukrainian forces, as we were able to see that the Russian armed forces within this area may be in the worst conditions that we have ever seen so far. We were able to hear that in major news today, a Russian Lieutenant Colonel, Yevgeny Tikhonovich, was killed today, and he was the commander of the 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment. And the regiment is a part of the Russian brigade structure. This is more so of a clerical or administrative level sort of a command at this point inside of most Russian Federation units, although he may have been in one of the older legacy divisions of the Russian armed forces. Some of them do exist, and for this reason, he may have been an actual field commander of the 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment near to the front lines in some sort of an operational headquarters. We have not been able to get the exact details and information about where he actually died, but we will be getting you all the exact details of how he died right here. This is coming from a Russian military blogger who posted the information about his death today, and they stated, "We express our condolences to the family and friends of Evgeny Viktorovich Tikhonovich, who gave his life defending the residents of the Kursk region. Lieutenant Colonel Tikhonovich, Evgeny Viktorovich, I'm not going to say his name a single time, that is just too long, served as deputy commander of the 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment on the infantry fighting vehicle of the on the infantry fighting vehicle of the Motorized Rifle Division." So I'm guessing in the entire division they only had one infantry fighting vehicle, and he was on it. Of the 44th Army Corps, of the Joint Strategic Command, of the Leningrad Military District, of the Motorized Rifle Regiment, of the Guards Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade. Our fellow countryman was 41 years old. Farewell to the hero.
I gotta tell you, man, that was like freaking like word soup right there about what he was actually like commanding and stuff like that. That was wild.
Wait, hang on. Let me go get the, let's see, official title of Idi Amin. Let me go get that really quickly. Here we go. Yeah. Oh man. This seems like this description here, Matthew, of what this guy was is like the official title of Idi Amin, who was the dictator of Uganda for a while. And let me make sure that we get the title correct. His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal Al-Haji Dr. Idi Amin Dada VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all of the beasts of the earth and fishes of the seas, and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular. That title seems to be
Uganda in particular. Man, Man, that's the most peculiar title I've ever read. That guy's extremely humble, by the way.
Man, and here's another meme, right? Here's another meme. Idi Amin, president of Uganda, and then it goes into the full title, and he looks a lot happier. You know, it's like that. It's like that. It's like that. What do you call it, man? The Dre meme or something like that. The Drake meme. It's like that one.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing. But beyond that,
I gotta say, I wouldn't want to be known as Lord of the Beast personally. I would not want to have that title, but to each his own.
man, he lets out the beast inside him. But beyond that, a farewell to the hero will take place on January 20th, which is tomorrow, from 10 to 10:30 in the Ritual Hall of IP Gordiv. That is a specific IP specific to the Russian version of Disney called Disnorovovich. The defender of the fatherland will be buried with full military honors in the cemetery of the village of Sizaya. We were also able to see as well the official Russian post that was made by this military blogger, but nevertheless giving us clear and definitive information that the Russian Federation has lost another significant commander of an entire regiment-sized unit within this area today, which is showing us that at least in terms of command loss today, there has been a significant blow dealt. We have also been able to see that the Ukrainian 95th Air Assault has continued to hit the Russian Federation's armed forces within the region. Chad music ensues. But we were able to see the drones hitting the Russian APCs as they were moving along their way. And it looks like the video is buffering here. That's a shocker. But we are also able to see them hit another command BMD. We are also able to see them hitting a couple of more Russian APCs and supply trucks here as well. We now see them going after some specific Russian soldiers.
They were actually spaced out for once. What a shock.
Oh, those weren't. Those weren't right there.
They think that scraggly little tree line gives them some type of cover. They'd be better off literally standing out in the middle of the field and at least get some fresh air.
Man, I'm telling you, they really would. They'd be like, man, it's nice to have some fresh air. But instead, they hide under the trees, where the drones still get them fairly easy, picking them like grapes from the vine.
They jumped up from the family picnic and took off.
You know, Matthew, you know what? I was just saying that the Russians were being picked from the vine there, much like grapes. But you know who really does grapes the best?
Who's that? Paul Masson?
Oh,
no, not Paul Masson. No.
But moving on from that and out of that clip, we are going to be moving on a little bit down the line a little bit, because while y'all are thinking, well, Russians getting hit by drones, that's nothing that new. I mean, the Russians don't look that bad off in this area. I would like to show y'all the new arrival of Russian armored personnel carriers and transport equipment that these brigades and regiments and battalion tactical groups are using within this area right now, as we were able to see that the Russians were going to war today on the back of a tractor. Here's the clip. There's the tractor.
Matthew Ferguson? Is that you?
Is that a Class 30 Deltic? Crazy. I'm not gonna lie, man.
What is that on the floor, by the way? What is that black box down there with like the red button on it?
Let's see here. Let me see what you see here. Those are the car batteries. They throw those into the river to recharge the eels.
Oh, well, what is that really, though? Is that like some type of drone launcher or something?
I actually have no clue, to be entirely honest. I don't know what the hell that thing was. Let's take a look at it again. I don't know, man. It might be a lockbox.
That might be an electronic warfare device, maybe. It kind of looks like that.
Or it may actually be a car battery to go recharge the eels. The eels have got to be recharged.
Charge them up. Call them Teslas. They're getting charged.
Oh, man. If they were called Teslas, though, they'd be swimming around the river going, I am a pro gamer. But anyways, moving on from that and out of that clip, it's time for us to move on into the Ukrainian side of the front line today within the Kursk Oblast. And we were able to see that, unfortunately, the Russians are still using FPV drones to a greater extent of success. We did see that they ended up hitting a Ukrainian Humvee today that was relocating from point to point. We don't know the exact damage or casualties that were caused within this vehicle. We can see that it was outfit with an extensive electronic warfare system on the back of the Humvee, but once again, fiber optic drones really are not disrupted through normal electronic warfare means. For this reason, the Humvee was unfortunately hit. It is still important for us to remind everyone that there is a noticeable shift occurring inside of Russian drone strategy and Russian drone technological developments focus at this point, to where the Russians have largely moved away from attempting to create the mass-produced, incredibly successful and cheap Ukrainian FPV drones, which have had wild success in the war, and they are working towards a more limited number, but nevertheless equally successful amount of fiber optic cable drones. These drones are able to pretty much break through any form of electronic warfare interference, at least within those scenarios, and are able to succeed in much higher rates in completing their missions. These differences in drone technology and development in between the Russians and the Ukrainians has largely arrived because the Ukrainians have had a much wider array and access to advanced electronic warfare systems. And while the Russian Federation has claimed that they do have a large amount of electronic warfare systems, the simple issue is that the Russian Federation does not have an advanced industry outside of the oil sector. And for this reason, the Russian Federation is not able to produce incredibly advanced and refined components like Western companies are able to be able to create an effective electronic warfare system. And so while both sides are employing electronic warfare systems quite literally everywhere across the front lines, it simply is the fact that the Russian systems have a much higher rate of failure when actually having to be used in their true intended form. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, have a very high success rate with electronic warfare equipment. And so for this reason, we've seen that there has been an evolution. Ukraine's drones have evolved from the beginning of the war to simply be cheap, easily manufacturable, and thrown out in the thousands. These things do not have to worry about electronic warfare jamming because for the large part, it simply does not exist around most areas of the front. However, the Russians have to concern themselves heavily about that. Otherwise, their drones of any type will not be able to make it to the Ukrainians that are their targets. So for this reason, while Ukrainian drones have become mass, numerous, and cheap, Russian drones have become smaller in number, slightly more expensive, but at the same time about as reliable as the far more numerous counterparts that the Ukrainians have on the opposite side of the front. And we're starting to see that that's especially being seen inside the Kursk Oblast, as fiber optic drones are being used here more so than any other front so far in the war. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we were also able to see that the Ukrainians have been capturing a significant number of North Korean trophies. We could see the Ukrainian Special Forces operators. I also once again want to note that it's a little interesting how almost every single soldier in Ukraine is called a Special Forces operator at this point. I hardly hear of any regular infantry anymore. It's like the entire military is calling itself a special force. But moving on from that, let's take a look at the trophies. First off, we have this AK-12. That's probably not North Korean, that's probably just Russian. And they also have, I think it's a Belomo reflex sight on it, which is a little interesting.
Looks like a phony EOTech of some sort, like maybe a 512 or something.
Let me go see if I can find the Belomo holographic sight. Holographic sight. Let me see here. Belomo. Yeah, I think it is a Belomo. Wait, hang on. Dang it, I won't be able to find it. I had to go through the Russian optic wiki to go find the stupid thing. Because the Russians have like 9 million optics that they made, and they use like none of them but 3. And because every other one was a failure. But beyond that, interesting to see that they were able to capture this. But moving on from that and into the next one, we were also able to see this Russian pack with a trench shovel in it as well. This is a very old trench shovel, most likely from the times around World War II or just after World War II. They have such a surplus of these things, they get thrown around quite a lot. Moving on from that, though, we also got to see this letter that a North Korean soldier had written in Korean. So we were able to confirm that this was a North Korean soldier. The AK-12 was, of course, issued to him by the Russian Federation, but still interesting nonetheless. We were also able to see here a form of a Korean papers of some kind. It also has a QR code on it as well.
Yeah.
And
why would they have a QR code on it if they can't even scan it?
Well, I wish I could get into that, but maybe it's for the Russians to scan it, so that way they can pretty much, scan them through whenever they're having to process them somewhere behind the lines, like their equipment being turned in or something like that. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not entirely sure, but we were able to, wait a minute, this is a first aid manual. This is a first aid manual that they issued him. Look at this. It actually shows them how to apply a tourniquet.
Oh, that's interesting. And also, that's a very interesting manual. I guess that's helpful, I guess, if you know how to read Korean.
When you have a hole in arm, you take an orange band, wrap it around, and then hold a part of it in your mouth like you're about to inject the methamphetamine, and then you gently tighten it, and you're good to go, Blade. It's like great
Also,
medical advice.
Also, why is in the picture number 3? Why does the guy have like Korean tattoos on his arm like that? And they're pointing to it with an arrow, like he has instructions written on his arm in tattoo.
He was once a part of a North Korean gang called the Great Sun-Faced Leader Kim Jong-un's bringers of devotion and revolutionary zeal, and they used to get tattoos. It's a gang thing. But I don't know. I don't know. Also, like, I just want to think about the practicality of this really quickly. So when when this North Korean Matthew gets hit in the arm, he goes, oh my god, I'm bleeding. Oh my god, I'm gonna lose my. Wait a minute. Flip, flip, flip. Step one. Like, and then it's like
consult the manual.
Yeah, it's like.
That is funny as hell, dude. I'm dead.
This is how little training they have. They're literally sending them out to the front with manuals on. Oh, by the way, if you're about to die in minutes, here's how to save your life. Make sure that you're calm enough to read this while you're bleeding out. It's like, that's a little interesting that's the Russian mindset. But here is something else in Korean. Unfortunately, we do not know. It's some sort of a list. Might be a grocery list. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, open the door. 5, 6, get shot at. 7, 8, go cry about it. Something like that. I don't know. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see their papers that were issued to them by the Russian Federation as well. This appears to be for Russian identification purposes, most likely. And then finally, we were able to see, once again, another note written in Korean. Although, I do want to point out, we do not know what any of this says. Unfortunately, I cannot read or understand Korean. Either the North Korean dialect of Korean or the South Korean dialect. So unfortunately, I'm completely blind on what this means. Also, some people are wondering, why in the world do you differentiate in between North and South Korean? People who understand South Korean may not be able to understand North Koreans. And that's not in every case. They're fairly similar. Well, they're incredibly similar. They're both a form of Korean. But the North Korean dialect is very different than the South Korean dialect because of about the 70 to 80 years of complete isolation that they've had from South Korea. And so for this reason, in some instances, pronunciation and also in other forms, spelling of certain kinds of characters and words has changed in North Korea compared to South Korea, or they've changed in South Korea while the North Korean version has not. And so in some instances, South Koreans actually cannot understand some statements that North Koreans make because the dialect is that different. It's almost becoming an entirely separate language that is a part of the Korean language family tree, which is a very interesting thing. If they keep that up for about another 100 years, it might truly be the case that North Korean could be considered a sub-language of the Korean language family, which only exists on the Korean peninsula. But anyways, moving on from that, unfortunately, I do not understand the letters. That was the whole reason I explained that. But nevertheless, a lot of people are talking about something that's going on that's a little bit bigger in the background right now than a North Korean letter. And, another North Korean being captured today, about the third one alive from what we know. But still, Russian forces are panicking in this area about a new possible Ukrainian offensive in Suja, and should Ukraine advance farther in Kursk or continue another offensive. And a lot of people are saying yes. Many of y'all will know that the Ukrainians actually conducted a fairly small offensive recently. We actually believed that it was going to be a very big one. Turned out to not really be the case. They advanced into Berdin, took Berdin, and then they once again reaffirmed their front line near to Bolshoi Soldatskoye, but we haven't seen them advance any further than that. There has been a rumor in the background, though, that Russian intelligence has been able to confirm that around 20,000 new Ukrainian soldiers have been moved into the area to prepare for a new offensive in an unknown direction, but it will be inside the Kursk Oblast. And this has started to raise the question to many people whether Ukraine should do this or not. Of course, we do know that they are hammering the Russian economy, and largely if they're able to deal any kind of losses to the Russian military, that will once again greatly speed up the amount of monetary losses that the Russian government is taking in fighting the war. But is it something that they should do or not? Is this something that the Ukrainian armed forces should undertake as an objective? And it actually seems that the large majority of people are believing that the answer to that is yes. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so the overwhelming majority of the audience, 75%, said yes, Ukraine should advance into Kursk, while 12% said no, Ukraine should focus elsewhere, and only 4% said it's not an issue of significance. And me personally, I would say it's a really good thing to keep advancing into Kursk, because Kursk is a very high priority area for the Russians. It forces the Russians to redirect troops to that area to push the Ukrainians back out of their country, and that will be, of course, an advantage for the Ukrainians on other areas of the front lines. Now, Ukraine has to be careful, though, not to allocate too many forces to Kursk, because they could also suffer a sort of disadvantage themselves by removing forces away from other parts of the front line where the Russians might be trying to move on while they're also defending Kursk. So it's a bit of a tricky one here. They have to make sure they're balancing both of their interests. interest. But if Ukraine can afford it, it's good to push into mainland Russia because Russia will allocate more of their high-value troops in that area to defend their country first. So I think it's a good thing for that reason. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe that it would be a good thing for them to conduct an offensive inside the Kursk Oblast. Once again, we're not looking at any kind of large strategic ambitions, and we're not really planning on the Ukrainians taking anything like the city of Kursk, but it would be a good thing for the Ukrainians to undertake because we do understand that there is a decent amount of frontline fluidity that it potentially can exist in Kursk where it does not exist in other areas. In, for example, the normal front line within occupied Ukraine, frontline fluidity, which is how much it can move in one direction or the other, is incredibly small. Because the Ukrainians and the Russians are heavily defended on both sides, and while both sides can undertake offensive actions within these areas, it's highly unlikely that these will succeed in any kind of a meaningful way. They may be able to take some ground, but it will be at the cost of a large amount of losses. And so for this reason, there isn't really a lot of potential inside of occupied Ukraine at this point to make any kind of frontline advances. However, the Kursk front line throughout the entirety of the campaign has been a very fluid front line, moving forward and backwards fairly easily, and it does appear that, in my opinion, the Ukrainians could conduct another offensive and be able to actually push through because there would be no severe defensive positions or major defensive positions that would actually pose some sort of a serious risk at this point to the Ukrainian, the Ukrainian attackers that would be attempting to advance in any direction based off of where they're at inside the Kursk Oblast right now. But before we move on from that, I do want to point out that the fundraiser has reached a whopping $1,100. Holy moly!
Let's go!
And I gotta say, tonight is a special night, an incredible night, as a matter of fact, because I'm actually going to call forward something that's somewhat rare at this point, and we're going to get back into the news in the Kursk Oblast. It is something that we have not called forward for quite some time, something that I believe needs to be called forward tonight, right now, the General Order. It is the General Order. It is the General Order. If you have $20, well, actually, if you have $5 to throw in, correction, throw it in right now. I'm going to be throwing in a good old $20. Making sure to lead from the front. But there is my $20 right there, and hopefully the entirety of the Lee Spring Army can join me in throwing in a $5 if you consider yourself a member of the Lee Spring Army, and you can throw in $5 if you can afford that. Throw it in right now because we're going to get this fundraiser over the top right here, right now. We're going to blow this thing away. And so while we blow this thing out of the water here and the fundraiser, I'm going to make sure to continue to carry on the news, and hopefully by the time I look back, that thing will be well past the goal. And so
holy crap, man, it's going crazy already. You see it, man? Look at it. It's racing forward like the Ukrainians. It's crazy.
Man, it's racing forward with that revolutionary zeal and that Chuche spirit. But anyways, moving on from that and into the rest of the news that we have inside the Kursk Oblast, we were able to see that the 36th Brigade has continued to hit the Russian Federation's armed forces within the Kursk Oblast. And we were able to see that right here. Check this out. We can see them there targeting the Russians and hitting them, slamming them hard. And we can see them once again.
It's going crazy, man. Look at the fundraiser, man. It's already up to a 1.5 raise. Look at that.
That's crazy right there. Look at that. We're almost up to $1.6 thousand. Holy moly. Holy smokes. I got to tell you. But nevertheless, getting on back into this news here, because we got some crazy news while that General Order's going to ham in the background. We were able to see the 36th Brigade continuing to hit Russian forces. And we can see them hitting a BMP. It appears that they actually hit 2 BMPs right there. A second one. Maybe even a third one.
Another one.
Another one. And we can see them continuing to hit Russian sheds. Those are tanks covered in a large amount of sheet metal, by the way.
It might as well be a shed for all it's worth at this point.
Man, I gotta tell you, it really does look like one. And we can see them hitting a mortar right here. Also, they call it a Minomet. You can see that at the bottom.
Also, by the way, we got some fantastic donations coming in, by the way. Some big ones, some 50s and some 100s and stuff. It looks like we're almost up to 1,900 raised, so it's getting pretty damn close.
Ole mole! We're only about $600 away from the fundraiser goal. Can we make it? Can we make it? Will the general order have the patriotic zeal and fervor in support of American and Western interests be able to make it to the fundraiser goal and far beyond? I have a feeling that it will. I think it will, to be entirely honest with you, Matthew, because it still looks like that general order is going strong. And with that, we are going to be moving on into our next clip, where we were also able to see the Ukrainians once again hitting more Russians in the Kursk Oblast, this time by the 103rd Territorial Defense Forces Brigade. Check this out. The absolute carnage of Russian vehicles in this area, the amount of abandoned BMPs. It's just truly a significant amount of losses. Just wild to see here.
Also, they have like a workers' equipment umbrella or something on top of that one little BMP or whatever that was right there. That's crazy.
Man, these used to be called cope cages, but I believe that they're now there to ensure that they do not get sunburned when working in the cold sun of the Kursk Oblast in the middle of winter. It's a very interesting kind of a phenomenon.
They could get snow burned, you know. That's a thing.
Also, I see some people. I want to clarify this. Some people are like, I don't get paid till Monday. Oh, that's totally fine. Like, no pressure. If you cannot support the fundraiser, do not feel pressure to support it. But if you can, please do. That's largely what we're saying. We don't want anyone to feel pressured about it, though, because if you can't, I'm not trying to shame anyone if they can't. It's totally fine if you can. But anyways, we can see them continuing to slam Russian BMPs in the distance, and those things are cooking on up. Look at that. Holy moly. And we also, by the way, speaking of cooking, we just cooked up a fine fundraiser total right here. It's now over $2,000. I gotta tell you.
Look at that, man. Over $2,000. That's crazy.
Holy moly. We were actually only $450 away from the fundraiser goal at this point. We are getting very, very close. And speaking of cooking, y'all know something that really was cooking today? The Ukrainian drone attacks. We were able to hear that more drones have entered the Kaluga Oblast and have been attacking Russian infrastructure in the area. We were able to see it right here.
БПЛА, прикиньте.
Ahoyet. And once again, they're under attack. We don't know the exact damage caused yet, but we have a feeling it has to be significant.
Holy moly, we just saw a $300 donation coming in. Let's see, we are so close to goal right now. I don't know how close. I think we're $100, or actually like $90 away from goal or something. We're super close.
And I gotta say, what an impressive number. We are only... $96. I'm bad at math, by the way, so that took me a second. We are only $96 away from the fundraiser. Oh, wait a minute. Correction? We are only $82 away from the fundraiser goal. Holy moly. That is absolutely crazy. We're getting close, folks. The general order pulled us through and raised $1.4 thousand so far. That's actually kind of wild when you think about it, that a general order has that kind of power. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have here outside of the Russian Federation.
Holy cow,
moly!
Look at that. Look at that. Did we hit goal? We hit the goal. Hey! Jaga, Igor, Slavic Ukraine. Man, we smashed the goal. What is it? It's about 33 minutes or so into the stream, so that was a fast one yet again. Huge thanks to the LSA for helping us to hit that. Another successful Sunday night fundraiser. That's crazy.
Another successful one, as that DJ Khaled guy said, another one. And it's absolutely crazy to think that we did it again. We blew away another fundraiser. Absolutely amazing. I got to give a big shout out and a huge congratulations to everyone who's been a part of this tonight, because we've done it again. We have once again reached another fundraiser goal, and the Lee Spring Army has shown that it will continue to be valorous and victorious on the battlefield of the internet and support of Western and American interests and our revolutionary spirit. The revolution didn't just stop in 1783 with the declaration of the Treaty of Paris and the founding of this United States. The revolution is alive today. That actually sounds kind of commie. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of patriotic zeal that we had going on there, it is time for us to move on into some interesting news down in the middle of the East. Some people call this the middle of the East. Y'all know something that's interesting? Nobody ever says where the Near East is. Y'all know that, right? Like they say the Middle East, the Far East, but there's no Near East. Have y'all ever noticed that? Like, where in the world's the Near East? If there's a middle one, there's got to be one closer to us. So where is that? And interestingly enough, there's actually an answer. The Near East is actually in Europe. So let me actually go show y'all that. The Near East. Let me go type that in. Yes. The Near East. It's Turkey.
Oh, it's Turkey. Oh. Look at that boiler.
Whoa, look at that Erdogan. I'm going to be a pro-Westerner today and an anti-Westerner tomorrow. Man, it's like that's what Turkey does. But beyond that, that's the Near East. It's literally just Turkey. And maybe a little bit of like Syria and like a tiny bit of Lebanon, but really most of the rest of this is considered the Middle East out here. So this is the Near East. This is the Middle East. And then this is the Far East over here. It's really just all of Asia. So I hope that finally answers to y'all what the hell the Near East is, so that way y'all know what in context the Middle East is. Turkey is not the Middle East. It is the Near East. Want to make that clear. So if you see anyone sitting there and going, oh, look at the Middle East, the Turks are Middle Eastern. They're not. They're Near Eastern. Very big difference. But anyways, moving on from that, and on down into the area of the Near East, we were able to see that the Russian Federation is still unable to enter the port of Tartus today. They're still waiting. They're still there. Look at this. There's the port of Tartus, and all these little dots are the Russian vessels. We can actually see that there's some larger, like actual frigates in the area. An Admiral Gregorovich class is in the area right now. Let me go pull that one up for y'all so that way I can get y'all a picture of this one. Let's see.
Crazy. It's all these ships just hanging out near the port. They can't get into it. They're just like literally going in circles out here.
So this is one of the vessels that's out there right now. It's just sitting there. They brought it in. They actually kind of like bust this thing in nearly just to kind of sit around the collection fleet that they have, which you can see an oil tanker. That's largely kind of I guess you could say an oiler. Oh, whoa, look at that oiler. That's sitting out there trying to keep this Russian fleet from running out of fuel as it's just sitting there. There's also an Admiral Gorshkov class, which is another Russian, I believe it's a frigate or something a little bit smaller. Let me go check. Let's see here.
Also, Enforcer, could you imagine if a Ukrainian like ship just sort of like found its way down this direction and launched some sea babies or something, started smashing the ship throughout the port of Syria? That would be insane, by the way. I don't know if Ukraine would ever do that, because of course it's a good distance away, but that would be one for the history books.
Dude, that would be one for the books. I'm telling you, man, that would be crazy. Also, there are a couple of other support vessels that are trying to pick up the ships that are sitting there in, well, not really the ships, but the cargo that's sitting in the port of Tartus, which is hundreds of vehicles and thousands of soldiers. They're just stuck there, and they're not getting out. And the Syrian interim government is not allowing the Russians in. So even with the Russians having this frigate, as well as this frigate, within the area right now, the Syrian interim government is not relenting, and they're just sitting here screwing over the Russians with each passing day because the Russians are unable to get the equipment or personnel out of Syria at this point. They're stuck at Tartus. And that is something that is really wild when you think about it, is that the Russians are so weak at this point, the Syrian interim government will disrespect them by just telling them you're not getting your stuff. And there's nothing that they really can do about it because they just don't have the military abilities or additional resources to go throw at something down here to be able to bomb the Syrians into submission or something along those lines to force them to relent and then let the Russian military leave. They can't even leave if they want to. They're forced to stay at this point. So pretty much all the Russians are stuck around this port right here. This is the one.
Yeah, I wonder how they're going to actually figure that out, because like you're saying, they really don't have an option here, so they're just stuck. So, like, how long can they even stay there? But surely they're going to run out of food or fuel or something. So, you know, how long are the Russians going to wait this out?
Technically, they could be there forever because as long as they have food, it doesn't really matter about the rest of the equipment. As long as they have food, these people can technically indefinitely stay there, or they could just end up starving. The Syrian interim government probably wouldn't care either way, and so the Russians they pretty much have their hands tied. There's really nothing that they can do. They just kind of have to wait it out and see if the Syrian interim government will eventually allow them in to get this stuff and take it out. But also, Matthew, I like how they have a travel agency here right near to where the Russians are pretty much hanging out at this point, because it's like that Twilight Zone episode, you know, the one, Matthew, where that guy like killed that cop in the alleyway and then he was like, hey, screw you, screw, and then he got like shot in the head and he went to hell and he didn't know it, and then like he was like, I want to go to the other place, I don't like it here, and then Fats was like, you are in the other place, this is hell. like whenever they go into that travel agency, the Russians are like, look, I don't like it here. I want to go to the other place, the bad place. And then the interim government and the travel agency is like, this is the other place. This is hell. It's like, no, it's like they can't leave. They're just stuck in this port permanently. They will never, ever leave this place. They have, in all sense of the word, been sent to the cornfield, and they're stuck in the cornfield. What a wonderful thing.
And also, I don't really see any incentive, like someone pointed out here in the live chat, like Thomas said, I don't see any incentive for the Syrians to let that equipment leave, the Russian equipment, for that to actually get taken out by the Russian ships. Why would the Syrian government let them take it? I really don't understand what would be the reason for them to actually let the ships dock and take it. Because, of course, the Russians were there supporting the Assad regime, which is who just got toppled. So, you know, it would make sense for the Russians never to get that back and to simply let them sit there indefinitely.
And I'd have to say, I think it does seem that the Syrian interim government is making all the right choices. I think that they're actually doing a fairly good deal in support of Western interests at this point, so I got to give them a pat on the back and tell them to keep it up. Also, one other thing I want to point out is look at how derelict this port is. Like, there used to have been, at some point, a warehouse building right here, because you can kind of see the outline of the foundation. It's gone. Like, it just isn't there. You can see all the other warehouse buildings of the same size that exist. This one, it's gone. Who knows where it went. Also, another thing that I find really interesting is just look at the state of the equipment. I mean, a lot of it's just like sitting there just rotting for the large part. We can also see, I don't even know what these are, but they're just sitting there. We can also see some trucks just kind of sitting around as well. I think that we dropped down somewhere near here. Oh yeah, we dropped down at that train station. We saw the shitty conditions of the town from there. Like, here's what it looks like here.
Ugh. Oh man, this is a rough train station right here. This is tough.
Man, looking at this, you think of, well, what I think of that SpongeBob thing where it goes, stuff like that. It's like, this is just terrible, man. It's horrendous. And then also the inside of their trains look horrendous. But beyond that, we're not here to talk about trains. We're here to talk about the port of Tartus. And we're really here to talk about the collapse of the Assad regime and what the impacts were for the Russians, because it was nothing good. But speaking of stuff going on in the Middle East today, we were also able to see that down near the Gaza Strip, something has happened. A thing happened. We were able to see that some hostages were handed over. I believe at this point, according to the official count, there was only 3 that were handed over. There were supposed to be around in excess of 30 that were handed over. I've only heard of 3. And we can also see the gang of guys wearing green headbands. They really like these headbands for some reason. Transferring them over to the Red Cross convoy, which would take them out of the strip. So here is that clip. This seems
Where'd
well
all these
organized.
guys come from, by the way? Like, I thought there weren't any terrorists inside of Gaza. Where'd all these guys with the green headbands come from?
Oh, they just happen to appear from time to time, It's nothing big. But something else that's interesting, it kind of is a very well organized event, Matthew. You can tell that everyone's really calm, that they have control. Seems like these guards are mentally sound of mind and that they're not over emotional or, maybe subject to an emotional outburst. Doesn't seem like that at all. Look at this. I mean, they're perfectly controlled.
Seems like organized chaos. It also seems like they're pointing guns at civilians and jumping on top of Red Cross trucks and yelling and screaming like lunatics. Who's even in charge here? I don't know.
I gotta be honest with you,
savages.
Nothing to see here. I think that this is completely overblown. In fact, I actually saw something like this at the last congressional hearing in the United States. This is just completely normal, and this is how a normal group of unemotional, non-ideologically brainwashed people would act. These are reasonable people by all measures. Also, this guy is apparently sweeping the roof of the car with his rifle.
Oh my God. Israel has to deal with this. Like that, if these people are allowed to stay here and keep running the place, there will never be any semblance of peace in the Middle East between the proxy groups, Israel, and anybody if they're still allowed to remain here. That's just insanity.
Oh, maybe. But we were also able to see the clip in the second one here, but we won't show that. It's just a duplicate. We did get to see, however, the Red Cross convoy finally made it out of that shit show and then to the other side of the strip, which we were able to see right here. Also, what the hell was that at the beginning of the clip? Oh, that's a dog. I thought it was like a chicken or something. And I was like, what is that?
Someone's got a nice, great Chevy V8 somewhere around the area. Someone
I'm
getting bombed in the background, too.
Man, the bass of that engine is so loud, it's kind of like rocking the left, speaker of my headset out of socket. I'm not lying. It's like shaking and shimmering. Also, was that the flag of Palestine?
That was
Flying off
Israel, I think.
No,
Oh, that's yeah, you're right.
Wait, hang on, no, that looks like Kuwait. Actually, hang on, let me check that. No, wait, hold up. Well, it's not Palestine either. Who the hell is that? Let me go look at Middle Eastern flags. Hang on, folks, because that's not Palestine. I got to go find out who this is. So, let's take a run of the mill. So whose flag is this then? Because I'm not seeing it on this list either. It's not Kuwait's. It actually has like a red trapezoid, a black, white, and green. Let's see, black, white, and green. And then this is red. So it actually does look a lot like the Palestinian flag, if any. It doesn't look like the flag of Kuwait. The flag of Kuwait has the most similar shape, but the color pattern is that of a Palestinian flag. So a little interesting to see that a Palestinian flag is flying from the top of a Red Cross vehicle into Israeli territory. Don't really get what's up with that. That's a little interesting, but you see it drive.
I think that's the flag of the UAE, actually. I pulled that one up, and it looks pretty close to it, actually.
So let's see here. No, different. Let me show. Let's see here.
Doesn't go the UAE.
No, it doesn't go all the way to the top. It's trapezoid shaped.
I don't know, man. I think that looks like UAE to me.
No, because UAE, the red area rectangle. This flag, red area not rectangle. Different flag.
Then who is it?
I don't know. I couldn't find any matches. That's what I was just pulling up. Like if you were seeing the stream, you may have been moderating, but I pulled up this whole list of flags here. The UAE was included, and the closest thing I could find was the shape of the flag of Kuwait. Notice how it's not a rectangle; it's a trapezoid. But that kind of a flag design does not exist. So the closest thing in color pattern to this flag is the Palestinian flag, because notice how the UAE has a green, white, black stripe. This one has a black, white, green stripe, and then a red field. So the closest thing to it is the flag of Palestine.
I don't know. To me, that's kind of looking like the UAE. It might be obscured or something. It kind of looks like the block of red shape there a little bit.
Oh, well, I mean, it's right there. It's fairly clear. I mean, we've done this before on what it was an F-35 or an F-16. It ended up being an F-16. But that is not a rectangle. That's a trapezoid for sure. You can even see that down near the bottom area, there's no giant red field down there. It looks that it tapers back off again into a trapezoid. So it looks like a Palestinian flag. It almost looks like the flag of Kuwait, but with the colored pattern of the Palestinian flag. That's what it looks like to me. And also, I don't know why they would be flying the flag of the UAE. It's not like the UAE was involved in this at all. This was a U.S.
I think they actually were. They were involved in negotiating it. They actually facilitated it.
Really?
I believe so. I believe they had a pretty big hand in it, actually.
I eat my foot on that one then. But beyond that, I don't think that's a UAE flag. Let's see. Let's see. Why are their flags so similar? It happens. But I don't think that is a. Is there another video that we could see where we get a close up of the vehicle? Maybe we could go back and see the people standing on the roof, because I really want to get down to whose flag that is. Because there's a decent amount of symbology in having a flag on a Red Cross vehicle, because they're not really supposed to profess any nationality. They're supposed to just be a neutrally aligned group. So let's see if we can see the flag here. And we can't see it on the top of this car. So I'm guessing it wasn't this vehicle in the convoy, but there are other vehicles that are also covered in a sea of people. So unfortunately, I cannot see the flag well enough. Still fairly certain, though, in my opinion, it looks to be let's see, someone said that's the flag of Jordan. Maybe, but at the same time, it's more trapezoid shaped like this, like on the flag of Kuwait. It has, also, the other thing is, let's see Jordan. So Jordan does have a similar color outline, but once again, when we go back to the video here, and let me go grab it, because, this isn't supposed to be a big deal, but beyond that, it is a question that I have. Notice this doesn't form a point. This is a flat edge to this red area here. So, like, some people are saying it's the UAE, some people are saying it's Jordan, and some people are saying that it's a whole other country entirely. There is no country that follows the shape and color design of this flag in the Middle East. Not even Palestine has a flag shaped like that, because this is this is triangular, and there's no point in the middle of the white field. It's a flat edge like you would see on the Kuwait flag. So it's like the flag of Kuwait, but with the color scheme of Palestine on it, for the shapes on it. And some people are saying Jordanian doesn't seem, because if you look at it, notice, I wish I could get you all a side-by-side here. That was really easy to see. Notice no triangular point in the white field. This is a flat edge on the white field. In the Jordanian flag, it's a triangular point in the white field. So that would be a very easy thing to tell the difference in between. It has a flat edge like the flag of Kuwait. It looks kind of like a UAE flag, but the problem with that is that the banner doesn't even line up at all beyond the red field, because the UAE and then Palestine's flag and Jordan's flag are completely reversed in color order. So Palestine is black, white, and green. The UAE is green, white, and black. This flag is black, white, and green, meaning that it's not the UAE because the colors are in reverse. So it looks like
What's weird is I'm looking at footage here of the Red Cross trucks traveling to Gaza, and there actually was not a flag on any of those trucks when they were traveling there. So I don't know if that flag was planted on the truck, maybe by one of the terrorists, like jumping on top of it or something, because it's actually not present on any photo before it got there.
It sounds like it's a Palestinian flag that was poorly made, and it was pretty much a misprint of a Kuwaiti flag, but they put the... I wonder where in the world that flag design came from. This is not normal at all. But anyways, moving on from that, that's a whole side note for a whole other time. I'm getting like completely consumed with this at this point. But beyond that, some of the hostages were released, and then right afterwards, we did hear that Hamas is already pretty much regaining control of the strip, and they'll be rebuilding their power over time to once again begin another attack on Israel, meaning that the crisis has been averted for only probably a couple of years, and then we're going to be right back to where we were right now. So great to see. But beyond that, moving on out of Israel and on over into Iran. Well, actually, really quickly, we are going to speak about what's going on in Israel in the Gaza Strip. Hamas released the first 3 hostages to Israel. And will Israel break the ceasefire after all of the hostages have been released? And a lot of people are saying it really depends on what Hamas is going to be doing. Others are saying that the Israelis are going to break the ceasefire without a doubt, and others are saying that the Israelis will abide by the ceasefire. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so now that we got the news that 3 hostages were released to Israel today by Hamas, will Israel break the ceasefire after all of them are released? It looks like 43% said it really depends on Hamas actions, while 33% said yes, Israel will break the ceasefire, and 17% said no, Israel will abide by the ceasefire. And honestly, on this one, it's a little bit tricky. I would probably say it does depend on Hamas's actions. If they do follow through with letting the hostages out, the rest of them, then maybe, and most likely, Israel will probably abide by the ceasefire and honor their word on that. But at the same time, though, I personally have some doubts as to the actual status of some of the hostages. I'm wondering if some are actually already deceased that they're claiming are actually alive. And right now, we just simply don't know. So that's why I would say it probably depends on Hamas actions. If everything goes according to plan, though, I do believe they will probably abide by it. But if not, then Israel's probably going to unleash hell. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I do believe that it largely does depend on Hamas actions. Although if the Israelis violated the ceasefire just for the fact that the ceasefire was very lopsided, I largely would be able to understand that kind of a standpoint from the Israelis. They were able to get the hostages released, and then they could get right back to business and making sure to clear out the place and make sure to finally get rid of that Iranian proxy group, which continues to have a pretty strong grip over the Gaza Strip, even at this point. But moving on from that and out of that area, it is now time for us to move on into the area of Iran. We were able to hear some fairly interesting news coming out of this area today, as according to Nexta, Iran seeks to urgently begin constructing new nuclear power plant units in cooperation with Russia. And during a meeting with Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin, the Iranian president Masoud Pezeshkian, I don't even know how to pronounce that, we're just going to say Masoud, announced that he had come to finalize agreements on the construction of new units of the Bushehr nuclear power plant. Both parties emphasized the importance of starting the construction as soon as possible and completing it in the shortest possible time. After the meeting, Putin stated that the Bushehr nuclear power plant contributes to Iran's energy security and called the project a flagship initiative. However, no specific agreements were disclosed. Located in southern Iran, the Bushehr nuclear power plant is considered the most significant Russian uranium project in the nuclear sector. Russia handed over the first power unit of the Bushehr NPP with a capacity of 1,000 megawatts to Iran in 2013. Construction of the second phase, including the second and third power units, began in 2016. The second unit was initially scheduled for completion in 2024 and the third in 2026. As of mid-2021, Iran's debt to Russia related to the construction of the MPP stood at approximately $500 million. And there it is. That's what it looks like.
Why do they need a new nuclear facility, though, inside of Iran? Seems kind of a weird thing to do, considering Iran's energy needs are pretty much being met right now. So I wonder what this is about.
I wonder what this is about. And one thing that I find very interesting about this is that Putin said this is going to help out with their energy security, but the thing about that is that Iran is a major oil producer, and they actually produce more oil than they ever consume. So technically, they are not in any kind of an energy crisis of any sort, or we're even getting close. So I would have to say that, in my opinion, being entirely honest with y'all here, I think, in my honest opinion, that this is most likely a cover-up that they're going to be doing here in the future for Iran to be able to continue to enrich nuclear-grade, well, weapons-grade uranium, so that way they can claim that it's for the new reactors they're supposedly building and not for the nuclear weapon that they're about to attempt to test, probably here in the future. That's what I'm largely thinking at this point. It seems to me that that would be a decent certainty. But nevertheless, before we move on from the Middle East and on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight, we do have a big question, one that's been dominating the live chat even after we moved on from it. What flag was on the Red Cross vehicle? Most people don't know, don't have a clue. Others are saying that it was the flag of the United Arab Emirates, and then just a tiny percentage higher, it's literally only 1% more than the UAE option, is saying that it's the Palestinian flag. Others, 16%, are saying that it was a misprint flag. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like the enforcer said, 43% are unsure, undecided, or other. So that's the majority of people. While 22% said a Palestine flag, 20% said a UAE flag, and 15% said a misprinted flag. And on this one, I'll be honest with you, I'm having a hard time thinking maybe there was like some type of video glitch that sort of like disfigured the flag a little bit, because there really is no existing flag that matches it according to what we saw in the video. The closest thing I would say it was probably a UAE flag, but also someone pointed out in the chat that maybe it was the old Iraqi flag. And I pulled that one up, and it does match the shape and color, but there's two white stars in that trapezoid shape, which are not present in the flag seen on that truck. So I don't even know, really. Like, I'm just curious at this point, but I don't think we'll have the answer, sadly. But, Enforcer, what say you?
Let's see here. Yeah, the old flag of Iraq from 1921 to 1958 is probably the closest match that we've seen. Wait a minute, hang on. British Palestine mandate flag. British Palestine flag. Let me go see this one. Wow. I knew that was coming. I knew that was.
Alright, if you want to watch more, go subscribe or look it up. I'm about to do something else, get something done. Take it easy, guys. This is all really interesting. I think it's important to watch some of this closely. Alright, peace.